Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce Dickson. I want to thank Alexis for inviting me to teach a class on anatomy. I wrote a book on it long ago. I had to do a lot of prep to get ready for this kind of anatomy class, but it's been a lot of fun and I've learned a lot. So I want to start with an ecumenical prayer, which will tell you something about how I work in my sessions with clients. And you can just listen and you don't have to do anything here. So I'm going to close my eyelids. And Father, Mother, God, ask for a clearing. Ask for a clearing on all levels for the highest good. We ask that only the highest God and the greatest loving be present here in a way that each person can handle and according to each person's highest good. We ask for this in love and understanding, keeping clear our individual destinies on the planet, and for this opportunity to be of service and to expand love, light, and harmony on the planet. I give my thanks, and so be it. So that's how I like to start. I'm going to use the term SPK a lot, and SPK is abbreviation of specialized kinesiology. Maybe other people are doing this, but I found that kind of useful because we've, as we will talk about, most of us who are active in kinesiology now have come a long way from Touch for Health, which is kind of what kinesiology used to be. Another one of my minor projects is to replace the word students with co-learners. And I think that's more respectful. And also, if I'm not learning, then the class isn't fun for me. So I should be learning too. Should all be learning. So that brings us to hearing where you people are at. And so I'm going to ask each of you to share in turn. I may be able to call your names out here if I can see their names. The names don't show on my, oh yes, they do. Okay. And what I want to know is, have you taken any prior anatomy courses? How many and how recently maybe? Which anatomy topics interest you most? Because that's going to drive the class. Otherwise, anatomy can be very dull and boring. So it has to be, we have to harness your interests as the drive chain of the class. And the third thing is, which organs or body systems do you personally wish to upgrade? And I am going to take some notes. And Alexis, are you going to be a participant in this class or just an observer, or what do you want to do?
No, I'm a participant, and so is Jorah, because we can always use more. So is Batman, because we can always use more anatomy help.
Excellent. So a little bit about your anatomy bio and what your interests are.
Sure. I did take anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, that sort of thing at the beginning of my natural health journey, like when I was taking iridology and herbology. So we're going back like 20 years. And at the time, I wasn't muscle testing, so I wasn't using it the same way that I do now. It was book learning. I passed my tests, and that was about it. And then I started studying systems a lot more when I started muscle testing and needing to understand what does this mean when I was working with people on the table. My interest right now in anatomy and physiology, I'm writing classes on working with pregnancy and working with development of energetic systems in pregnancy. I just finished writing my conference journal paper for the Nolative conference, which is about the development of the chakras and them kind of following the development of the nervous system, right? And the nerve plexes. So I'm looking a lot at like embryology and that sort of thing. That's more what I'm doing with anatomy right this minute now. Batman, do you have anything to say about what anatomy you would like to learn?
Well, I did learn a little bit about the heart because I was thinking of actually doing an anatomy class on here.
Right.
But then I was lazy and didn't do anything about it.
Right.
Except for write about the heart. So I don't really have anything that I specifically want to learn. I just want to learn.
Okay. Cool. That's us.
Excellent. The next person I have on my screen is Kasia. Am I saying your name correctly?
It's Kasha.
Kasha.
Hi, nice to meet you. So my only anatomy is from Biology 12, which is, again, going back a long time ago. I remember really loving it. And we studied a lot of the systems in depth. So the nervous system, digestive, all of that. I don't know how much depth, but it's been a long time. Since then, the only other references I have to biology are the muscles and Touch for Health, which I don't really work in the Touch for Health system. I work with SIPs mostly, and I just muscle test everything. So a lot of my work is very intuitive. So I would love to know more detail about the systems that I'm working with and what things mean when they come up. In terms of personal growth in the system, I would like to dive into the most is digestive.
Digestive.
And you asked which system I want to upgrade. That's the one.
Cool. I had to do that for sure. Thank you. Hannah, how about you?
Okay. I don't have particular anatomy physiology background other than much like Kasha, like SIPS classes, so specialized physiology classes. And much like Dora, I just want to learn more and have, again, that background of like, when I get to a certain point in a session, to be able to go deeper, right? And to just have more information to bring into that and be more specific. So I definitely am interested in the more like physical anatomy, physical physiology mostly is the thing I would be most interested in learning more about, but also everything else.
Okay, fair enough. And Tony, welcome.
Hello, nice to meet you. So I took a biology class in college more than 20 years ago. That's my only formal training. I have colored in a few anatomy workbooks, so I feel like I have a pretty good idea of where things are and what's in there and what system they belong to, but I don't necessarily know those behind the scene details that are not really taught. That would be more like a Chinese medicine type of connection. I have not taken Touch for Health, but I've taken plenty of SIPs, and I've had my own issues with the nervous system, vestibular system, brain health, digestive system, reproductive system. So I love any of those areas for extra knowledge. I think that's it.
Okay. And one more person, April. How are you, April?
Wonderful, thank you. I have taken some anatomy and physiology 100 years ago in high school. Currently in schooling, and will have those modules to go through. So I feel like I have a good understanding, but I just definitely want to go deeper into that. That's probably my biggest interest, is gaining more knowledge. So I can go deeper into context and especially digestive organs. I have a huge interest, liver, cardiac.
Okay. All right, I guess that does that. And we have another person here, Liz.
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. It says mute.
Sorry, I am here, but I'm sorry, I just finished work, so I can't turn my video on. I'm kind of cleaning up the office as I'm here, but I've studied extensively through my yoga and bodywork training, like the bones and the muscles and the fascia. And then with my brain integration training, a ton of anatomy and physiology of the central nervous system and the brain. And I feel like the gut is the missing link for me. So and for my own personal wellness as well.
Yeah. The microbiome. Yeah, certainly.
The link between them all, yes.
Yes. Well, what I love hearing in the sharings is there's a very lovely sponge-like approach towards anatomy, which I think is the right approach. That's the fastest way to learn. Be a sponge and soak it up. So this class is going to be mostly on kind of getting rid of the old myths that aren't really working so much anymore, the old myths from conventional medicine, and getting into the better framework for looking at anatomy and physiology as it would be useful for energetic practitioners.
Hey, Bruce.
And I'm not, yeah?
Sorry, I'm not sure. Maybe on your frame, the way that you've got people set up, maybe you can't see everybody, but there are 3 other women that
Oh,
are
there's
here
more
as
people.
well.
Well,
Yeah,
what do you
so
know? There's some more
we
people. There's
have
Taylor.
Taylor, Lisa, and Michelle. So I don't know if you want to make sure that they get included in this as well.
Absolutely. Pardon me, Taylor. My apologies. What would
I
you
think
like to
that's
say about your
pretty
anatomy
common to
history?
have the Zoom layout a little wonky sometimes.
Yeah.
My most recent anatomy and physiology education is just from Touch for Health about a year ago, last March. And before that, just, college and high school anatomy and biology. One of my things that really stood out to me in your bio and some of the information was that you're studying or training in the root cause protocol, because I haven't heard any kinesiologists talk about that. And I'm very interested in that kind of different approach to things and how minerals, run the show, as Morley would say. And yeah, so it's very interesting. And I'm also interested in the nervous system and digestive as well. That seemed to be, a common theme, and that's so pervasive that I definitely think very important and interesting. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Lisa is next year.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't muted. And here I am chewing on my dinner. Well, I'm a brain integration practitioner, and I've been interested in health and everything my entire life. I've also been going to a practitioner of NRT and ART for over 13 years, and it just lit me up understanding the body from this framework. And so I'm thrilled to be a practitioner now, and I'm just interested in learning what I can, because I haven't had any formal training since high school in anatomy and physiology.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And Michelle.
Hi there. So my background is actually, I'm a pharmacy technician. So that's the last time I took that was probably about 10 or 12 years ago, those classes. And then from Touch for Health and SIPS. But the thing I'm probably most interested is the nervous system, and especially integration. I was actually reading the write-up for tonight's link for the class about being ungrounded. I'm like, hey, definitely. Because I'm seeing both sides, but I can't figure out how to put them together.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so Alexis, that's everybody, correct? I don't know what happened to it. Alexis, you are muted. Is
Yes.
that everybody?
That is everybody
Okay.
that is here right now. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's keep going then. So not this class, but for class number 2 and beyond, there's going to be a show and tell part of at the start of each class, where the people who want to go on will bring an article or a paper or a journal or a plastic model or something else that they are interested in and would like to explore from the viewpoint of anatomy or physiology. And this could be pretty wide open. But the reason this needs to happen is that, if everything written about anatomy was put in one book, it would be like 10 feet tall, and it would be 5 million pages, and that would be pretty boring to go through. So the only way to keep it lively and keep it alive is to let your interest drive the class. And I will prepare a topic each week, but a lot of it will be based on what co-learners have asked about in the prior weeks, so that we hit all the things that you've expressed interest in from my point of view. And I think that will probably get us through most of the body and certainly all the priorities that people have here. So my interest in biography is already written down. I think it's on the website there. So I'm not going to repeat that here. My current interests are the physical and energetic dynamics of brain integration and neuroplasticity. That's where I'm still healing. And I'm also interested in, apart from physical accidents and physical trauma, how 90% of disease tends to be psychosomatic. And I'm going to plug this book here. Here's a nice book. And somehow the rest of you might want to mute so that my picture can be bigger. I think that's what's happening. But maybe you can see that this is Messages from the Body, which is a huge book of the mental emotional meaning of pain anywhere in the body. And you can get a digital version for $40, which is the way to go, from talkinghearts.net. And I think in the chat, is it in the chat? I didn't put that in the chat, but we'll talk about that we'll talk about this several times. And if you didn't capture that, I will get it to you sooner or later. So how come we're seeing Sheila at the moment? Or is that just me? Is everybody else seeing me?
That's just you. I have it set up right now for the recording to show the speaker. So it is recording with
all
you.
right. Okay. Very good. I'll carry on here. So we talked about that. I'm also interested in how to teach anatomy to students of energetic things without them getting stuck in the old myths. And I'm not alone in that, really. There actually is a topic of people in medical schools talking about the myths that medical students bring into medical school, and how the instructors have these myths also, and how to take these apart. So there's actually quite a bit on that. I was interested to learn that. So preparing for this, I asked myself, what's the best way to study and learn anatomy? So I'm going to turn it around and ask you. I wanted to go over how to raise your hand. So Alexis, can you tell people how to raise their hand? Do we have that here?
There is a little button that has a smiley face and reactions, and then you
That's
click the little
right.
arrow by it,
Okay.
and then there's just a button that says raise hand.
So if you have an idea, I'm looking at you people, you co-learners, about how we should study anatomy and physiology. I'd like to hear your point of view. Oh, how should we do this? What part of our brain should we use? Well, I'm hearing a lot of quietness here. So what I'm going to jump in here then. Oh, were you going to say something, Alexis?
I was. I mean, I don't know about everyone here. I myself tend to be a very kinesthetic kind of learner. And so I've always found that things like anatomy coloring books are amazing. And you can, when I was studying anatomy the first time, I got these, but now there are coloring sheets that you can download for free online so easily. Like if you go onto Pinterest and you type in like a system coloring sheet, there's a ton of options.
Yeah.
So you can just print them. And yeah, so being able to like do something always helps me. And I think that's why I've learned so much more anatomy from working on people on the table than I ever did from books.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like this book.
And you like that book? Oh, yes.
It is huge.
Good. The book that Joy is showing is what I want to talk about a bit, because that book that Joy is showing, especially, tends to have a left brain approach to studying anatomy. It's into structure, names, and detail. And that's the way anatomy has been studied for the last 150 to 200 years. And we kind of want to get away from that, because the other half of the brain is where we need that other half of the brain to visualize these things. So we look in Jorah's book and we see the picture, but can we close our eyes and then visualize it? And when the client's on the table and they say, oh, it's the pancreas, that's the priority. Can you visualize that and what it looks like and how it's feeling and maybe what color it's going on? So those are the kind of things we want to leave open. We'll leave those doors open so that those are tools that we can use. One of you mentioned it, and I want to mention it again, that the study of the structures, the names, and the details on the left side of the brain is a very good balance to a lot of kinesiology practitioners have, which is a very open right brain. And believe it or not, that anatomy tends to balance the two sides of the brain so that your right brain isn't so dominant, that you have access not only to your feeling and intuitive gifts, but also to your structure and detail and question asking ability, languaging and question asking ability. And I think that will probably make sense to all of you. I also want to say that if you like to learn and find solutions to people's anatomy concerns, you can be of service to many people, make a lot of money, and have a good career. It's much harder to sustain a career working with only people's invisible bodies. And you can prove this by asking any astrologer, tarot card reader, or psychic. It's rare that they make much money compared to the people who can work with hands-on with muscle testing in the body and so on. So that's where we have a real advantage. Any questions so far? Okay, carrying on. So I was going to show you the super duper anatomy book that I have. I have a 4-volume book of anatomy with corpse dissection pictures in full color. It's quite grisly, quite delightful if you like that stuff. But I can't even find the 1 volume I brought from the basement. And this is somewhat indicative of, I think, what happens to people who've been working on clients for years, that you do tend to visualize, and you can visualize. And if you need more detail, you do consult these books, and that increases your ability to visualize it so you can query these structures better. But I want to go back a bit and talk about Gray's Anatomy. So Jorah's book is kind of similar to Gray's Anatomy. And does everybody know what Gray's Anatomy is? It's not just a TV show, right? It's a book like Jorah's, but the first book of that kind, with lots of detailed pictures. And that kind of study, that kind of left brain study, was the most prestigious and glamorous health profession between about 1750 and 1960. And if you could study the details of anatomy, physiology, and pathology, then you could pass the medical exams, and then you could do surgery. And that was the big prestigious thing before Einstein and his group took over. But we don't have that problem. We're not interested in surgery. We're not going that way. We're really going another way. What we're interested in is how the physical structures and functions integrate with the whole of the human being, especially with the mental, emotional parts of our psyche. So the human experience, from my point of view, is built from the bottom up, starting with our lowest frequency, the physical material body, its internal structures. And anatomy and physiology is only our lowest physical foundation, no more, but also no less. So while physical anatomy is the foundation and it's the structures, these are not the same as function. Structure is not the same as function. The function of our material organs starts with vitality. And the vitality is imparted to physical structure by the etheric flow of our meridians. And I'm sure everybody here knows about meridians. And occasionally I'll use the word etheric because the meridians are part of the etheric body. There are flows within the etheric body. We're not going to go too much into that in any of these courses, but I do want that door to be open a bit. And we can conclude a lot of that discussion by saying, or observing that if you have a corpse on a table, you can't muscle test them. And the reason you can't muscle test them is that there's no vitality. So there's no function, there's no vitality, so there's nothing to test. So even if this is before rigor mortis, you can't muscle test a corpse. Any questions so far? All right, I'm going to barrel on here. I also believe that Mother Nature created plans for the healthy function of the human being on each level, all the way down to the function of our organs and each kind of cell. The vitality and function of each organ cell comes from our etheric body and higher. And why might this shock some people? Not us, but why might it shock some people? It contradicts the current healthcare myth. And what is the current healthcare myth about our cells and organs? And so I'm going to ask you, so if you go to a MD, none of us, but you go to a medical doctor, you go to a hospital and you ask them, what do you believe about cells and organs? What do they tell you? Who can tell me what they will tell you? Raise your hand or just speak up.
Not entirely clear what you're asking, what they would tell you about what?
Yes, if you went to the hospital and said, doctor, what are cells and organs? How do they work? What can you tell me about them? What does he say?
They might list a bunch of structures and what they do.
Yes, they do. But there's one that maybe it's more obscure than I thought. What they will tend to tell you is that our organs and cells work like parts in a car engine, and really a 1950s car engine. Now, not so much. I'm making a cartoon of this. Yeah, I'm making a straw man here, because a lot of doctors, of course, are quite knowledgeable, and they're not. I don't want to shame any doctors, but they do have this. There is this idea in a lot of conventional medicine that if you have a physical problem, you have to find the organ that has the problem and you give it a drug to fix it. Or if that doesn't work, you take it to the hospital and you cut it open, you take out the pathology, and it starts working again. That is basically a car mechanic metaphor. That structure and function are converged and there's no separation between them. But all of us here, if you've had experience with any kind of energetic work, you're likely to agree with me that structure and function are separate. They're not the same. They can be on top of each other. They can influence each other, but they're not the same. And that was the big breakthrough of applied kinesiology and Touch for Health. We proved that structure and function are not the same in human beings. And so that's worth knowing. So why did nature plan things this way, that structure and function would be different and that we could access structure through energetic things? Well, that way it leaves human beings free to evolve so we can gradually learn more about our non-physical bodies and all those potentials. And so we do this by doing a lot of experiments. And in this way, the myths and assumptions that practitioners and eventually the public have about healthcare are going to change. That over and over, physical disturbances are going to be shown to be caused by disturbances in our higher frequency bodies, our imagination, emotions, thinking, and role models. And so outside of accidents and physical trauma, physical problems caused 100% by physical causes are going to be more and more rare than people think they are. Most people think they are. We're kind of the elite who know that who know already this isn't true. Any questions so far? So in the last 10 to 15 years, thanks to polyvagal, the neuroplasticity people are verging on this insight also. Polyvagal and neuroplasticity are the start of acknowledging and accepting how the more malleable and fluid energetic parts of the human being are easier to change than using surgery. And this leads to a pretty good definition of disturbances. Disturbances are any unworkable, no longer useful feelings, thoughts, memories, role models, which if held on to long enough, create psychic and or organic pain and discomfort. So I found this word disturbances very useful. If you don't know what's happening in an organ, it's not that useful. You don't want to diagnose unless you have a license, but it's also not that important to know the name of the disease, because our immune system self, or as I'm starting to say, our neurology self, doesn't use a name. It just says disturbance. It just says something's wrong, right? It'll definitely have a feeling. It may give it something more than a feeling, but in terms of language, disturbance is really useful as a catch-all for anything that could be wrong with anything in our anatomy and physiology. And because our immune system knows where these disturbances are, knows where they're located, we can query our neurology self about where they're located and what's causing them. Any questions? So, yeah.
So when you're saying disturbance here, that's just different languaging for what a lot of us would call stress, like when looking for
Yep.
whatever imbalance in the body has allowed for a condition to exist, yes? Or do you have a
Yes.
different definition for that?
I think disturbances is a lot more useful than stress.
Okay.
Stress is kind of an overused word in our field. I don't think it's an accurate word, but I don't think it's precise from the body's point of view. I think it's not. Don't want to put down stress. If stress is working for you, keep doing that. But I think it's what's worked better for me is disturbance, because that's how I think the inner child perceives things. It doesn't really say, I don't know, maybe your inner child says stress. If your child says stress, then by all means use it. Mine says disturbance. So they're almost synonyms. And they both get at this idea that something's wrong. And even if the body doesn't have words for it, through testing, we can find words for it and find what the causative agents are. So that's what I like about applied kinesiology and touch for health. That was a real paradigm shift. And polyvagal and neuroplasticity is starting to catch up with us now. Oh, I wanted to talk about, yeah, I wanted to tell a story about, I knew this woman 20 years ago who was highly into intensive body work. And she took a series of courses in corpse dissection to be a better body worker. And she found this very fascinating. But in the 20 years since that happened, I think that specialized kinesiology has really grown and expanded to such a point that you can find through testing pretty much any kind of structure all the way down to the DNA and organelles of the cells if you need to, without having to cut open any corpses. And we know that, but most clients don't. And that's a big aha for a lot of people. Let's see. So even though in this class we're going to study organs and systems such as digestion and the nervous system, the end game is visualizing these things more clearly and hopefully visualizing them enough that you can imagine colors to measure what's going on with them. So if you were looking at a brain problem and you were wondering what part of the brain is having a disturbance, wouldn't it be nice if you could visualize your client's brain in such a way that the disturbed part shows up in a different color? That's kind of where we're going. And if you can't do that, of course, you can still test all the way through. And this, of course, verges on the topic of trapped emotions. Does everybody know about Bradley Nelson and emotion code? We're not going to take it up as a topic here, but as long as you know about that, that's useful. If you don't know, that book is free online now as a PDF. And there's I think that's one of the URLs I want to put in the chat. I'm not sure I got it there or not. I do have it here. Does anybody need the URL of the PDF of emotion code? Everybody has that? I will put it in the chat in case somebody needs it. Okay, moving on. Okay. Taking off from disturbances and stress, all of us agree that mental emotional negativity is causative for organic disturbances. And in class number 2, I plan to have a short discussion about how to protect ourselves from negativity released from clients during sessions. Alexis showed the anatomy coloring book, and that's good. And I noticed that that's a new edition that I haven't seen. That's wonderful. I wanted to turn you on to another source that I think is really useful. And it may be in the chat already. I also hope you've heard of John Upledger and his work with cranial sacral modalities. He has one of the best anatomy and physiology things going, and you can see quite a bit of it for free online. And it's right here. So this, I'm going to put it in the chat here again. And if you haven't looked at this, I would, because it's very lively. It's not so much corpse dissection. It's more, more humane than that, more lively, and more encouraging of visualization, because that's the end game, is to visualize these things more clearly. And so if you haven't checked that out, I do recommend that. There's also a famous Digest series.
Here's mine. Local woman ruins own life. You are late. Oh, I told everyone that you were.
I'm going to invite people to mute. Thank you. There's also a famous Reader's Digest book called I Am Joe's Body, which was the most, it's like Reader's Digest greatest hits. And it takes each organ and it's like you're interviewing the organ, and the organ tells you about itself. Like you look up the thyroid and the organ says, oh, I am the thyroid, and here's what I do, and here's how I work, and here's what I look like. And it's a humorous and lighthearted way to learn about the organs. And if you don't know about this, I do encourage you to check it out. I'm not going to assign it in a way, but the week that we study the thyroid, I'm going to say, and I hope everybody will read the thyroid. These are short articles. These are not long articles in I Am Joe's Body, because I think that will answer a lot of questions, and hopefully it will stimulate the right kind of questions. It will help you ask the right kind of questions you have about each organ and each system. Any questions?
Not a question, but I think that when we actually are moving forward with this class, what we'll probably end up doing is creating a thread in our Discord server that all of the members are part of, or maybe also including something on the website and one of the forums where we can share resources. Because, you know, as you're talking about some of these resources online, I'm thinking about some of my favorite little YouTube videos and things that teach great little bits of anatomy and physiology. And we could all start pooling some of those resources to find things that work well.
Absolutely. That's what I hope will happen. Yeah, because I love that all of you in your sharing have a really open mind about anatomy and physiology. But what we have to move to is asking useful questions so that you can learn. So it's not just bathing in anatomy and physiology. That's right brain. That's okay. We don't want to get rid of that. We want to feel that completely. But we also want to be able to ask questions. And so I want to provide enough resources so that you're stimulated to ask the questions that you want answered, and that the questions you don't know that you have about anatomy and physiology, and that you can respond to client questions, because the clients will be much tougher than us on these topics. You know, they will want you to prove yourself, and you know, you'll want to have enough information that you feel confident. And of course, you feeling confident is one of the end games here. Okay. So I want to present a couple more frames for anatomy and physiology. And one of them is this. And I'm going to put this in the chat. And this is a kind of a scale. Doesn't show very well there. But it's the idea that everything in the human experience is between two poles. On one pole, there's anatomy, physiology, skin, bones, organs, muscles, and that's low frequency. And on the other pole, there's awareness, which is more the high frequency. And really everything in the waking human experience occurs somewhere between those two poles. For instance, if I ask you, where do our mind and emotions occur between those two? We'd have to say somewhere in the middle, right? And that would be good. That'd be a good place to start. That'd be an accurate place to start. Why is this useful? You can test along the scale like this. So I'm digressing here a bit, but I want to say that when a client brings a disturbance and they think it's their digestion, but you're not so sure, you can test along that scale to see what their own higher guidance thinks is the priority. I used to get a lot of clients who were into weight loss, and 7 out of 10 of those clients didn't have that as a priority from their own system. Their priority was more about self-esteem and self-judgment and self-talk and so on. So we want to be able to test along that scale. And when it is down at a low frequency, when it is down in the cells and in the DNA and the organelles, we want to know that so we can go there, because that's pretty exciting. If you've never done that, it's very exciting to work to do. So I think all of you have kind of got it, that anatomy physiology is low frequency and kind of our ability to make choices and deliberate decisions is higher frequency. And that this is, you know, kind of very common in our field, talking about body, mind, spirit. But I don't think body, mind, spirit is as precise as we really want it in the field of kinesiology. And so there are some more useful scales for testing things in terms of the anatomy of the spirit. And one of them is this brainwave chart, which I'll show. And maybe we'll even talk about this other chart. So I'm going to go to the share. And this. And here's, now that's your screen, I think. So that didn't quite work. We rehearsed this, but didn't work out as well as I'd hoped. I do have a great image here. And I'm going to try to get it up here. Here it is. Here's the image. I think I have to open the image again. Come on. There. Okay. Now, Alexis, can they see this image yet? Here, share. Now I think they can see it. Everybody see it? Yeah. Okay. So this is a useful scale. And I've used this scale a lot. How does this relate to anatomy and physiology? This is in the realm of the anatomy of the spirit. You'll notice that I haven't talked about the chakras at all. And that's because I don't think they're that useful compared to these other tools that we have, unless you're doing work on the chakras, unless that shows up as the priority for the client. I come from a generation where we were inundated, where every book about healing was about chakras. And we just kind of got overdosed on that. And so it was really refreshing to look at the scales of brain waves and to other things like that, and also the laugh zones of laughter yoga, and start using these as ways to access where disturbances are in clients. So this is kind of in the realm of energetic anatomy or anatomy of the spirit. I'm not going to say more about this because we're not really, really take a case study to do this justice. But I want to make this scale available in case it's useful to you. And this is a particularly good one. All the scales aren't as good as this one of brainwaves. So I'm going to stop the share on that and get out of this. Go back to this. Any questions? I'm on the fence here about showing you one more, and the last part, one more frame for the anatomy of the spirit. So let me just check inside here and see what I think makes sense here. Go forward with this. I think this is probably a good place to stop. So I'm not going to show that. But
Bruce, before you show something else, there's a couple of us with hands raised.
There are hands raised here.
So maybe
Lisa,
start with Lisa,
your
and I'll
hand.
see if she has the same thought as me, and I'll ask my question if it's not the same as hers.
Lisa, I'd like to hear your question.
Yeah, it's about brainwaves. I've been really interested in this. There's the place that I work, they have something called a heart quest test. Anyway,
Yes.
one of the things it measures is brain waves. And some people have some real issues there. And I haven't really known how to go about addressing that. I try to work with the report, but I haven't had great success. So, that's something I'm interested in, and that maybe now's not the time, but
Good for you.
But how do we address a brainwave issue?
No, let's address it. It's a great question. Is this heart math or is it similar to heart math? Do you know?
No, it's not a technique. It's just Heart Quest. It just measures. You put something a thing here and a thing there, and it measures all kinds of things, chakras. It measures vitality, whether the person's, brain is functioning and so on. So I don't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
A lot of very interesting steps or pieces to it, but the brain wave is the one I'm particularly interested in.
Well, here's my deal on that, because me and my friends have looked at all those machines for decades, and I have a couple of friends who've owned most of them, and they can be good. I don't want to put them down. We used to call them the skio machines. They're often hooked up to a laptop, and they're often hooked up to a program that then diagnoses. My bottom line on that is that these aren't much fun to operate as a career, because the machine's doing the work, not you. And it's more fun to actually test clients than it is to hook them up to a machine and have the machine tell you what's wrong with them. So I'm not saying the machine is wrong, but I don't know anyone yet in all my years, maybe you do. If you do, I'll listen to that, who's been testing with these machines, testing clients, making money, having fun and enjoying it. Does anybody know anyone doing that who's done it for a decade or more? I don't, not even one person.
Well,
I'm not,
I don't use this test. Where I work uses it, but my question is really, how do I work with improving the brain waves?
There's a really simple answer to that, and that is to remove the next disturbance that you notice in your psyche. You unburden the next disturbance you notice, you will be improving your brain waves, coherency. And if you keep doing that every day, if you keep looking every day for the things that are disturbing you and resolve them and clear them up and do whatever you need to do, and if some of those are inner child disturbances, you have to unburden an organ or a memory, do that. If you keep doing that, you will get more coherent, more integrated, and the brain waves will be healthier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're not going directly to a brain wave, because the brain wave is a result of a disturbance.
The brain wave will reflect disturbances. But in the 80s, we had little black boxes. They kind of looked like this. I almost have I want to show you a little box, like a matchbox. And they would put out a frequency, and the game was to listen to this or keep it around you, so that you would entrain your body and your brain waves to the frequency the black box was putting out, right? So can you entrain your brain waves to a frequency? Yes, but the problem is that your brain is in a wave, and these boxes were mechanical. So they're working directly on the brain waves wasn't sustainable as a modality. Measuring them, assessing them is okay, but treating through the brain waves wasn't that sustainable as a modality. Though biofeedback is, of course, quite useful, which is more of a method. But brain waves, changing brain waves per se, didn't become a method that I'm aware of. So it's a complicated question, actually, because those machines are quite complicated and they do so many things, and they can be accurate. Any other questions? Oh, there was another hand. Alexis had a hand.
I did. I have a two-part question. One part is simpler than the other. Okay, so kind of along the lines of what Lisa is talking about, like in SIPS and even more so in GEMS Dimensions, we are working with brainwaves. It's much more like noticing when there is a disturbance in a brainwave, because it's not the end game isn't to try to always put someone into an alpha wave state or always put someone into a beta state or whatever it is. It's supposed to be that you're in the appropriate state for what you're doing at that moment in time. When I looked at the chart that you had up, there was an abbreviation, I think it was SMR, that I'm not familiar with. The chart that I'm used to working with for brain waves would have gamma higher than high beta and did not have that other one. And I was just curious what that one was.
Right. I noticed that too in looking at these charts. I'd like to have a separate conversation with that. And it also sounds like you might know more about this than I do. But I'm not prepared to have a discussion on that now, but I did notice that. And I forget what SMR stood for. I did look it up. I was a little bit surprised to see there's now a variety of charts. In the 80s, there was just, a few categories. Now there's more categories, and some charts have the extra categories and some don't. So the field has changed since I studied it heavily. Anyone else have ideas about how future classes could go or can go? Otherwise, we're winding up here. Questions, how things could go? Well, for those of you who will be continuing on in the second class, we'll definitely be studying. We'll probably start with digestion and then go, if there's time in if we finish that, we'll go on to the nervous system. So I'll prepare both those topics and we'll just get into it with pictures and everything.
Bruce, do you want people to have something that they're bringing to the next?
Yeah. It would be good if you would bring questions about the digestive system and the nervous system, and questions about any other organs, systems that you have questions on for future classes. Because I want to see what you're interested in. Because you'll to put it quite frankly, you'll get bored if I'm just talking for an hour, right? So it has to be more interactive, and that means that you have to kind of turn on that left brain and say, wait a minute, I don't agree with what Bruce is saying. I have a question. Yeah. Or I heard this the other day and Bruce didn't mention it. I wonder if he knows about this. Or here's the latest article from WebMD on the digestion. Does Bruce think this holds water or not? Do we agree with this or not? So there has to be much more of a forum and a seminar thing going on here rather than just talking heads. That'll keep it lively. That'll keep us all engaged.
All right. So just putting it out there for anybody who is interested in it. Oh, look in the chat. Sheila's saying she looked it up. SMR is a sensory motor rhythm brainwave. Synchronized electric brain activity. Oh, interesting. Okay. Now I want to look that up and find out more about that. All right. So for those of you that are interested in actually doing this as a weekly thing, just to make sure that everyone kind of understands how we're wanting to set this up. This event you were able to register for under the events on the website. The other class will be under the self-paced studies. And what we're suggesting is that people are basically signing up for a set of classes. So we're kind of getting a package of 5 because that makes more sense for most of us than just doing it one at a time. And because we kind of want to form a little group, right? And be in a spot where we're learning together and having fun bouncing ideas off each other. If there are materials that go along with it for the lessons, extra resources and things like that, I'll just be popping those, or Hannah will be just putting those into the classroom space. And then anyone who's registered in that class, you'll be able to access all that stuff. We'll make sure that it goes into like a Discord server or something as well. But just if you're wanting it like in an easy spot on the website, that's where it will be. Hannah's just popped the link into the chat if you're wanting to sign up for the next set. this video is going to be available for everyone for free, just so that people can kind of get an idea of what we're wanting to do. And the other thing that we're going to make sure that we're doing, not this one today, but like as soon as we start with the actual content, really, we're going to kind of keep track of who's attending how many classes, so that after, say, 10 meetings or something like that, we can give you a certificate for 10 hours of anatomy and physiology practice and study. Because there's a lot of associations and organizations out there that are starting to require that practitioners are showing a certain number of anatomy physiology hours, right? And a lot of us maybe don't have the time or the resources right now to go and spend, a semester taking an anatomy physiology class somewhere. But to spend an hour a week and let that accrue over a couple months, and then to know that we've gotten our AP hours and conversation might be very effective. So those are some of our goals to make this work for all of us and make it as engaging as possible. And thank you so much, Bruce, for agreeing to jump in with us and launch something different.
I want to help make your school more successful if I can.
Me too. Anybody have any final questions or thoughts before we turn off the recording for today?
So when do the classes officially start? Is it next Wednesday?
I think so. Bruce, is it next Wednesday?
Sure, why not?
Same bat time, same bat channel?
Yes, unless we need to change the time. This time is fine for me.
Okay. So that is the intention. If something changes, we'll make sure it goes out to everyone. Okay. Thank you all for being here with us this evening.
Thank you for already knowing so much. Also.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn off the recording. Bye.